Hmm? That's odd.
Do you want me to try from my angle, brother?
It's buffering. It says, there we are. Good evening. My name is Jay Rothman. I am the host of the show. Welcome to Real Men, Real Talk Live. Hi, good evening. Welcome back to the show. Again, my name is Jay. I'm the host of the show. I am here to introduce my co-host this evening, coming in from the man of the land from down under. He calls Australia home. Welcome, 𝘽𝙧𝙚.
Thanks for having me, brothers. Looking forward to diving in deep again.
All right. We have Jeff Fasano, Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome to the show, Jeff Fasano.
Good evening, one and all. We're ready to dive in deep on something that we're not sure we're diving in deep with.
And we have Josh Richer, who is off this evening. He is actually on set of Shark Tank in the middle of the 13th season, pod number 2. He's on set this evening. So unfortunately, he's not going to join us physically, but he's here spiritually with us. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. We are here for episode number 74.
Oh.
Damn.
Yeah,
Well,
we're just moving right along here.
74.
Time flies, though, brother, when you're having fun.
You know, last night I went to see a show, and actually 2 friends were in the band. They're from Austin, Texas, and my friend Alice says, "Hey, you're doing that show with those guys." And I went,
Wow.
"Yeah." And she goes, I have to watch it. She goes, "What, did you just start that?" And I went, "No, we just did our 73rd episode." And she went, "Oh, wow." And it hit me last night.
Yeah, wow. Beautiful. As we wait for our viewers to join us, I want to just take a moment here to welcome our viewers and listeners to tonight's episode 74. If you should hear something that you like or love, we invite you to tap your love button on your monitor to light us up this evening. Tonight's it's the 3 amigos on Real Men Real Talk Live, as Josh is off tonight on set. Also, viewers, if you should have any questions that come forward or comments, please drop it down into your comment section there on your feed, and we'll do our best to acknowledge and answer as many questions as possible. I want to take a moment to welcome our viewers, not only from Facebook live stream, but also from YouTube and our newest channel or platform, LinkedIn Live, coming in. So tonight's show is all about breaking free from your past patterns to let go and flow. And so it's an interesting topic because it's somewhat a piggybacking off of last week's episode. But I really wanted to take some time tonight to really dive down deep into what type of patterns have we been holding on to, some of us consciously and many of us either unconsciously or subconsciously, just living in the old patterns and not even have any awareness that we're there. I want to take a moment here also to welcome any viewers that are coming in from overseas. Please let us know where you call home today. I know we have Jillian Bowie. It's been a long time, but it looks to me like you may be joining us this evening for, I believe right now, it may be the middle of the night coming in. I think home for you is somewhere in the UK. Just to remind me, it's been a long time since we've seen you, girl. Welcome back. Welcome home to Real Men Real Talk Live. And if you are coming in from YouTube, feel free to also drop some comments down, and we'll do our best to acknowledge you as well. But again, tonight's topic is all about breaking free from your past patterns to let go and flow. Ev, I would invite you, since you're sitting right next to me here in this moment, to kick us off and warm us up and take us out to abundance here. And what does breaking free of the patterns mean to you? And what does letting go to flow also mean?
Thanks, my brother. Yeah, another deep topic, and
How in
yeah,
the UK? Oh my!
Scotland, brother, Scotland.
Oh my! Well, it is close to the UK, though.
Yeah.
Not too far.
Not too far, in the same neck of the woods, sort of. But yeah, no, thanks for having us again, my brothers, and to all our brothers and sisters out there in the collective, no matter where you are, whether it's the UK, Scotland, here in the land down under, on the other side of the pond, with a lot of the brothers and sisters over in the US of A. Tonight we're talking about breaking free from those old patterns or past patterns to really let go and flow. And it does come on the back end of last week's topic that we were talking about. I think with tonight we could dive in a little bit deeper about what some of these patterns may be, that are blocking us from living in what we're saying as flow, but being able to really honor, being able to respect where we've come from in the past, to be able to really live in the present. When I think about breaking free from the past patterns, what I find with a lot of people that I help on their health, fitness, and wellness journeys is it's an emotional attachment to the past. Even for my own personal story, there was emotions like anger that I've discussed in previous shows. There was emotions like, betrayal, rejection, all these other, lower vibratory emotions that really kept me blocked in the past. Now, I'm not saying that these particular emotions happen overnight and you're able to release and let go to live in this sort of flow, because what we've got to understand, my brothers and sisters, is that they are a part of who we are. And until we really honor, like I said, and respect some of these emotions that we're talking about, then we can't really move in this flow. So for me, being able to let go of some of these past patterns, a lot of it had to do with emotional attachment. Now, that had to do with relationships that I was in. Man, it's happened to do with career that I was in. I've been pretty lucky with the health side of things, but it's even had to do with that survival mentality program that I was in. So until I was able to be here in the present and really become more self-aware of those past patterns, then I was never able to let go of. Because these were deep within my beliefs. They actually were things that were a part of me that I was walking around unconscious with, my brothers and sisters. So look, I know we're going to be diving in deep tonight, but that's just a little bit of an intro that I wanted to share, because I really feel that once we get to the root of some of these emotional patterns that we keep replaying over and over again, that we will allow ourselves the space to first forgive some of those patterns to be able to release and move forward. What do you reckon, Jeff?
Wow, you hit on a bunch of deep things. The one that just stuck out was beliefs or conditioned beliefs. My old belief that I was taught or conditioned that made me or put me into a life of survival or survival consciousness, because I was taught that and led to believe that life is about surviving and doing what we need to survive in life. And that is a belief. That is not our truth. It is a conditioned belief that leads to these patterns and behaviors that reinforce the belief. The patterns, the behaviors we will unconsciously or subconsciously create these behaviors that support the conditioned belief that we are here to survive and in survival consciousness. So what is that behavior? What are these behaviors? And this is just an example, because we all have behaviors and patterns that we perpetrate that hold our old beliefs in place, which means it holds us in a comfort zone. What are those beliefs that are conditioned within us And what are the behaviors and the patterns that we are continuing that hold those beliefs in place? Recognize that, which is not to be dramatic, but it's also a very monumental recognition. And then what Ev says, instead of saying, oh my God, I need to get out of this, allow yourself to have compassion and acceptance for yourself that that's where you are, and then move to a place of moving out of it. Because unless we accept that I'm perpetrating these old behaviors or patterns that are holding these old beliefs firmly in place, and see that and bring that to our awareness and consciousness, it is then we can shift into a more empowered place of moving deeper within ourselves to see our greatness.
Beautiful, Jeff. Beautiful, brother. Love that, man.
Yeah, I want to take a moment here to jump in and break it down from my perspective. Also, I wanted to, before I go there, though, I'm excited to see a number of our viewers that are back tonight that we hadn't seen in some time. It's nice to see
and also for our viewers out there, I can notice sharing to other brothers and sisters. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts as well. It really does help grow the message.
It's good to see you. Welcome home, viewers. Jeannie Cash, it's been a while. Karen Demick, I'm not sure. Hopefully I got your last name pronounced properly. If not, let me know. If no worries either way. Jillian Bowie coming in from Scotland, and Scott Eisenman coming in somewhere from back east, either New Jersey or PA or who knows where he is today. These are some of our viewers. Abigail Engel, it's been some time since we've had you live. Welcome home, viewers. It's so good to see you. Join us this evening on this topic of breaking free from the patterns to let go and flow. You know, it's interesting when we talk about patterns in life. So many of us aren't even aware that we're living in a pattern. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the patterns that we live in aren't even patterns that we created. They're patterns that were handed down from generations, sometimes 10, 12, 14 generations within our family line. And it's the, as in the Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz talks about is the domestication. We refer to it as the download of the programming we get from 0 to 7 years of age. And a lot of the time, the patterns that we are unconsciously living in are not even ours. We didn't create them, but we inherited them, and we live in them as they are our truth, until some of us have some type of awakening, something that happens in our life that creates some type of awakening. And in that awakening, we have the opportunity to kind of assess, evaluate, and determine if the patterns that we're living in, are they even serving us anymore? And then it becomes a choice to either release them, cut the cords to them through some type of experience, some type of healing modality, or some type of emotional break or detachment from those patterns. But ultimately, one of the areas Karen's brought up tonight, she mentioned traumas, patterns that even we can even inherit the patterns from our past generations, from our relatives that were their traumas. And then we carry them into our life, and as though, they're ours. And one of the ways that we do it, one of the ways that we actually endorse it is when we have, let's say we pick up a disease, we get a medical diagnosis, and we go right to, well, it runs in the family. It's my dad has it, my grandfather has it, my great grandfather, we go the whole generations back. And the real question is that really true? Or is that just a story that your family has endorsed or believes is a truth, and it keeps you stuck in it? It gives you permission to stay sick with the 10 or 14 or 15 generations behind you, because, well, that's all my dad's side of the family has type 2 diabetes, or I'm just using that as an example.
Mhm.
But from my understanding and my education in health and wellness, at least, only less than 10% of disease is genetic. 90% is lifestyle. And so, yes, if we are continuing the patterns that we were taught and how we show up for ourselves, whether it be in health and wellness, emotional, mental, physical, or spiritual, yeah, we're going to repeat those same patterns that impacts our body, because that's what we were taught. What do you make of that, Ev?
Yeah, 100%, brother. And it's funny you talk about that generational trauma, because I actually spoke with a beautiful brother here in the land down under who I grew up with on a previous podcast, which I've been storing this week. And I really mentioned to him, because he asked me, this beautiful question of, in the healing process, what comes first? Was it the mind, body, or spirit? And what I'd hit him up with, that a lot of people look past, is the heart, the healing of the heart. We've had a lot of broken hearts over generations, particularly in the land down under here in my culture, my community as the original people. And just for us, an example, we have massive diabetes rates, we have massive heart disease rates, and all these other chronic diseases. So these are just the effects of the deeper underlying patterns that lie within the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
What I'd mentioned to him then is that this is really about deep emotional release.
Mm-hmm.
You see, the heart is such a beautiful, beautiful instrument. It is truly the first organ that is birthed when we come out of the womb, my brothers and sisters. But if it is not playing in a beautiful symphony of the instrument that it is, then it's going to stay broken generation after generation after generation. So what's happening on the body's just the messenger, man. Don't blame the messenger. Don't blame the messenger. It's signaling to you that you're either sick, that you're either at dis-ease of something that needs to be released. Now, those emotions turn into patterns of belief systems. When I was talking about on the intro about the survival side of things, like I've mentioned in previous shows, a lot of my people here in the land down under, we live in survival, man. We celebrate Survival Day. That is a belief system that has been handed down to us. So you can only imagine the emotions that come behind survival state. As we know, look, there's a lot of shame in there. There's a lot of guilt in there. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of confusion, all of the low vibratory emotions. So like I keep saying, it really comes down to being able to release healthily and forgive the past to be able to move forward in this flow that we're talking about.
Mm.
I love what you shared there, Ev. And I want to bring up a question that Mary Kelly's put out there on the stream. She said, how do you know if you're in a pattern?
Look at your life.
Yeah. Look at your life.
This is the best teacher in the house.
Right.
It's called your life. Now, if you can't see your life, you're going to have to get some support. You may have to get someone that can put you in that calm, sacred space, in that silence.
A way to discover a pattern, because we're creating it, is what are we creating in our life over and over and over that doesn't resonate with us, that has the same outcome, that is not an outcome of abundance, but it keeps us in the place. I'm creating, or people creating. Why do I keep? And we've had this question many times. Why do I keep on creating the same romantic relationship over and 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 over again. Why do I do that? And then the first thing we do is blame that person for not taking care of our needs.
Yeah.
And why do I continue to create these relationships and my needs are not taken care of, or I'm not, you know, but we do it over and over. That's a pattern. And that might be because there's other more subtle patterns that we might not, but that's an example of a pattern that is very common.
Abigail says here, what old habits do we keep repeating that never really served us in the first place? I think that's more of a rhetorical question than a real question for us. It's a beautiful rhetorical question there you asked, Abigail. So many of our habits and patterns aren't serving us, but it's almost like we're in a maze. And you know, how do you get out of that maze?
It's called the great work. The term out there that's been known for a long time is called the great work. And it's something that we should be taught from very, very early ages. It's bringing harmony and balance to the conscious, the subconscious, and the superconscious mind. This is where we've got to go in deep, because in that subconscious, that's where all of these negative emotions are being harbored. That's where a lot of these belief systems are being harbored. But until we can release, like I said, through particular tools, through particular skill sets, then what we do, we keep repeating patterns. And that's where the ego mind loves to take over, because it's only in the known space that the ego lives. So once we start to bring a little bit of peace, harmony, and balance to these particular parts or minds of that space, then we're able to start, like I keep saying, living in this flow and living in that heart space where we can actually be guided and led from a heart space as opposed to this mental side.
So are you suggesting?
It's in our mental body where all of this conditioning lies. It's all up here. It's not in our heart.
The subconscious. Yeah.
How do we break that cycle?
Like I said, it's starting to bring balance to these things. But with the subconscious mind, like I said on previous shows, it can only be reprogrammed through three basic things. Now, you know, the sister was talking about habits. Well, obviously, one of those things is that we're going to have to practice changed behavior repetitively and consistently.
Yep.
We're going to have to allow full acceptance to where we've come from, to where we may be within our lives, to where we want to go. And then we have to practice unconditional release, being able to release with forgiveness, like I said at the start of the show. Now, look, that's just one way of looking at it, which a lot of coaches, they will do the same thing. Repetition is key with subconscious programming, whether they're doing it through affirmations, whether they're doing it through hypnotherapy, whether they're doing it through particular visualization techniques. And unfortunately, the other way that the subconscious is programmed, as we know while we're living in these patterns, is trauma. It's trauma. So we need to learn some of these things to be able to put them into our life. But being able to practice some of these things solo takes a lot of courage and strength, because you think of all of those hormones that you've been harboring along with these emotions, you're clouding in your judgment of your reality that you're living in while you're unconscious to the patterns may be flooded. And that's why we have the term unconscious to the reality.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Jay, I think you're muted.
Abigail says, I'm learning to let it go without seeking blame or forgiveness. Now, I get the first part of that, Abigail, of letting go without seeking blame. But how do you let go without forgiveness? I'm going to bring that question back to you, Abigail. If you are willing to expand upon that, I'd love to hear from your perspective, because I could tell you from my own experience as I was navigating early on in my spiritual awakening and understanding that most of my patterns that I had established and I was living in my life clearly were ones that I inherited or I adapted or adopted as my ego's best strategy to survive in life. And a huge part of my process of releasing my old patterns and habits and thought processes was through a process of forgiveness. First for myself, because a lot of the choices I made, I then was easily able to self-deprecate, self-sabotage, and beat myself up for a lot of the choices that I had made that had gotten me to that time in my life where I had that moment of that aha moment, that moment of clarity, that epiphany, that all of my choices, the majority of them, were no longer working for me or serving me and my relationships. But I had to also be willing to embrace two forms of forgiveness. One was forgiveness of self, and the other one was forgiveness of others. And I also want to go back to, touched on the trauma component. So many times, we may not even be aware that we're carrying trauma, consciously carrying trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't find out until less than a couple of years ago from a story that my own mom shared with me that I had never heard before, that in utero, when she was pregnant with me, she was going through a very, very deep personal experience in her life that created, for me, it was trauma in the womb.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she may not be aware of that. That's not how she described it to me, but that was my takeaway from her sharing this very, 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 very profound story that she shared with me. And through that story, it helped me connect some dots for my own life and realize that I had been carrying a trauma piece before I was even born, but in utero.
Mm-hmm.
And did that impact my life? I think each experience that we have in our earliest of years impacts us, imprints us in a very profound, deep way in our soul space.
Mm-hmm.
And that trauma for me, I think, probably came out in a form of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I struggled with massive anxiety for decades in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I attributed it to the home as an adult I created for myself. But I wasn't aware that it was much deeper than that it went back to my youngest of years before I was even born. And I was carrying trauma that was my mom's. And by no means, if you're watching tonight, I love you. And by no means am I here to give you one more thing to process as guilt or blame. That's not what this is about. Not here, not now, no more, no mas, not today. But this is just me acknowledging the truth of something that I had no awareness of until recently. But what that does, each time that my own relatives are able to come forward and share a truth of their own life, it really helps me connect the dots so much. And I am so grateful that my mom is alive today, that you are able to share some very profound, intimate stories with me that perhaps for you maybe felt like secrets, and we are only as sick as our secrets. And so I just want to take a moment here to thank you, Mom, and literally honor you, because that was such a powerful story that you shared with me. I had no idea. And there was a part of me that when I heard that story, it impacted me because I felt your pain.
Mm.
And I didn't know that that was there. And in that moment, it actually, I think, brought us closer together, brought me closer to you, another level of compassion and empathy and just deep love for you. So thank you for that. And I'm open and welcome always to hearing stories from your past. And I invite any of our viewers that have siblings or parents that are still alive to ask the questions, invite them to open up, create a safe space for your ancestors to share the key. Invite them to put the key in the lock and open that lock, open it up, to give you some answers that perhaps you didn't even know you were looking for. In that case, one major one for me. So what do you make of that, Jeff Fasano?
What we're taught by Mom and Dad is all based upon the trauma that they didn't heal.
Big one, brother.
That they didn't even know what was going on with them. So based upon what they were taught from Mom and Dad, and then through that trauma of their life, they then had belief systems that they passed on to us, which is all based upon their life experience, the trauma in their life experience, and what they were taught. And Jay, you started the show about breaking the chain. Breaking the chain of that. And we're all of us, people watching this show right now, all of us, this has happened to all of us. And even the way people now, what they're teaching their kids, if they haven't been willing to look at their life and begin to heal the trauma and break the chain, they're just still passing it along.
There you go.
They're just still passing it along. So the way in which we can break these old patterns, these old habits, these old behaviors, is we've got to be willing to look at our life. We've
Beautiful.
got to be willing to look at our life. That's where it starts. Look at your life, folks.
Hey, Fasano.
What?
Show up and grow up right here, right now. That's I'm netting out what you just said. I'm paraphrasing you.
Yep.
But that's really what you're saying here. I love what Jillian says. She says, the more awake I become, the more I realize my parents' trauma and how it shaped my unconscious patterns and beliefs without blame or judgment. But
Exactly.
the difference here, Jeff, what's coming forward for me, if I may paraphrase you, Jillian, is that it doesn't give you permission to stay in it anymore. Not here, not now.
Right.
It gives you permission to have an understanding. It helps you connect the dots, which I think for me, at least, is helpful. There are therapists out there. There are those in the mental health profession that say you don't need to go back there. You don't need to go there. But for me and how I manage the healing journey for myself, I like to connect the dots and at least have an understanding as to asking the why. And then the next question after the why is how? How do I break the chain? How do I break the patterns? And I think it was Mary Kelly that asked earlier, so how do you break the patterns? And I'll share from my experience of what helped me was, the first was having the awareness. The second was surrendering and understanding that all of those old patterns, which were really the foundation of the framework around patterns, is the belief systems that we inherited. And for me, it really came down to wanting to be free of all of them, and understanding that they had taken me so far in my life, but where they had landed me was in a life of just survival, which I believe that was part of the generation, the inheritance that I received in my family, because the backstory is all about surviving the wars and making it, and then coming from poverty and creating some type of middle income wealth. And for me today, it's no longer, I don't want to be just surviving anymore. I want to thrive. I want to live in what thriving can feel like. What does it feel like to be thriving? What does it feel like to thrive? How do we differentiate, Ev, between surviving and thriving? Is it a feeling? Is it an emotion? Is it a physical experience? Is it a spiritual experience? Is it all of the above?
What is, well, I think, not to break in here, but I think we've got before we even know what that is, we've got to, for ourselves, because thriving is subjective.
100%.
What is thriving for me? When the first thing that pops into my head, and when people say I'm thriving, and they immediately go to, I'm making so much more money than I ever have in my life. And is that really thriving? Go ahead. So I just wanted to pop in there. Go ahead, Ev.
Yeah, no, 100%, brother, what you're saying there, particularly on the back end when you're talking about, that's another old program where we naturally go into survival mode because we think our idea of success, happiness, and thriving is based on accumulating people, places, and things from the external world. But what that shoots us into is that competitive nature, that me versus you, that me, not we. So to me, survival, definitely, like you said, Jeff, it's a very objective thing, but it is a state of mind. It is a state of being. Let me say that again. It is a state of mind, and it is a state of being. Mm-hmm. Now, survival for me was just making it from week to week. Survival for me was, just trying to make ends meet and trying to be the best. But the thing with what I found with thriving for me was me at peace, was me living in the moment, was me not living in my past. Mm-hmm. It was not me living in the future of what I wanted to become. It was me aligning to my truth, my brothers and sisters. Yep. If that is one big question you can ask yourself today to be able to work out whether you're living in surviving or thrival mode, ask yourself, is this my truth? Does it align to my truth? Because like Jay and Jeff have just mentioned there, it's all of those things packed in. But we need to have this idea of what thriving means to us.
Mm-hmm. There you go. I love that. I want to expand upon Katrina May coming in from Canada, British Columbia area of the country. Welcome home, Katrina May. She says, thriving for me, and she's just echoing exactly what you said at the same time, Ev. So you guys are energetically channeling each other this evening. From Australia to Canada, thriving for me was living in joy and not living a life of damage control. Surviving is a form of settling with being unhappy, but it's familiar. Thriving for me is living in the present and no longer having any attachments to the past. And Jillian says, thriving for me is living an authenticity from the true self with gratitude. So wow. I love how between Jillian, Katrina, and you have right here, right now, I think you're doing a really great job of really breaking down what thriving in our world looks like, which could be very different than thriving if you are chasing, let's say in America, the American dream or capitalism and everything that goes along with securing wealth and securing property and securing high-end vehicles and all of the things that we think bring us joy, bring us feeling better about ourselves. We're talking about something much more profound and deeper here tonight. The thriving that we're talking about is really, if I may break it down, it's really coming home to connect at our soul level. Thriving is being at peace with ourselves when the rest of the world is in a crazy making state of doing. And when we can protect ourselves, as Ev, as you do so eloquently in your bubble, in the outback, and your walkabouts in nature, that to me is that's an epitome of what thriving can feel like.
What about thriving is living the life that you want to live?
There you go. Beautiful too, Jeff.
When I was in the corporate world for 18 years and for a good last bunch of years of that before I let it go and created a whole new life and created my life that I wanted. That was what I always said. I want my life. And I'm living my life right now. So I'm thriving. I let go of so much of old belief systems from my father to live my passion for taking pictures. And that is thriving. How many people in this world are actually doing exactly what they want, moving through life, living the life they want, loving, honoring, and value themselves, expressing yourself with love, opening more deeply to your heart space, and with all of that, living the life that you want to live? Or are you still in those old, patterns? And, I've said this many times in the show. What I learned from my father and did for 18 years was get a job, get your 401k, get your retirement plan, get your pension, get your health care, and then you're set for life. And I followed that and those belief systems that came from my father through his trauma, the way he was brought up in the Depression era. That's all he knew was survival. It wasn't about living life. It was about surviving life. There's a difference between surviving life and living life. But you've got to take a chance on yourself to really live the life you want. You've got to be willing to go within and find the truth of you that is not the belief systems of mom and dad and anyone else that has taught you whatever that is based upon their trauma and their belief systems. So go back, go look at your life. Is this the life I want? That's what I did. I looked at it and I went, I don't want this life. Fortunate enough, I found something and a passion that I love so deeply, and I've created a life that I'm thriving in right now.
I want to ask you, Jeff, if you could bring it back, and I want to thank you for sharing your truth right now, as you just shared. But you also mentioned how we get caught up in patterns over our adult life and relationships that we are attracted to. How can we break the patterns in those relationships? What do we have to do differently to break the pattern to the type of individuals that we tend to be attracted to that may not actually be healthy for us or good for the soul?
We've got to we said it earlier, Ev started, we got to be willing to look at our life. It's not about looking at that person. It's about looking at, why am I creating this? Am I willing to always look in the mirror first? Why do I continually create relationships that are unfulfilling and they always have the same ending? Because if it was healthy, it wouldn't be ending, but they always end. Is that ending always the same? Is that ending always the same? And if you keep on repeating that, the first thing to do is look at why. What's going on inside of you that is creating, attracting someone unavailable to what you say you want. And you say you want it, it's here. But when you embody it here is when you're going to shift and create new relationships, because it's all based upon loving, honoring, and valuing yourself. Where it begins is looking at that pattern, that behavior, and why we keep creating the same relationship over and over and over again. It might not be a romantic relationship, but I met this person, and again, and it happened again. It's about, will you be able to stop, look in the mirror, and ask yourself the question, why do I continually create this and make these choices that are very unfulfilling, where I'm not thriving in my life? That's where it begins. And if we can, then it begins with trauma. It begins with what our feelings. It begins with these emotions. It begins here, because the next question is, how available am I to the life I say I want?
Love that, brother. And I mean, you hit it on the head in so many ways, man. But, like it really does come back to boosting that self-esteem within yourself. Like you said, honoring, valuing, loving yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that can go, like from relationship to relationship. And that's why we fall, like you're saying, into those repetitive patterns, for that codependency, for someone to love me, for someone to see me, for someone to feel my presence in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this, that sacred chakra, the sacral chakra, that really we need to release some of those emotions, like we keep going back to. Otherwise, we keep bringing in those relationships into our life as the teacher. So how do we move forward and build this self-esteem? Well, first, you've got to forgive yourself. You have got to forgive yourself for going into this repetitive pattern. And like we've said on the show tonight, then you can start forgiving other people, places, and things outside of yourself. So once you start to release some of these negative emotions that I'm talking about, you start to build a little bit of trust in yourself. You start to build a little bit of compassion. You start to build that self-worth, that self-esteem that I'm talking about. And then as we're rising, trying to get into that heart space of that loving, that infinite love, unconditional love, where it is just an open reservoir of infinite love, then we're able to start expanding into relationships that we want to see in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But until we build that self-worth, that self-esteem, and build a little bit more confidence within our own lives, we'll keep attracting that particular lesson that we have to move past.
Mm-hmm.
I love what you just shared there, Ev. That's so beautiful. Jillian says, the ego loves patterns. The true self loves the abundance and variety of the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I just want to add one comment here, and then we're going to jump into our final segment of tonight's show. And we're going to mix it up a little bit differently tonight. But I believe, from my own experience, is that if you're willing to slow down enough just to take a deep breath, you already have your answer, meaning you already know if you are living in patterns, old belief systems that aren't serving you, that have you feeling bad about yourself, having self-sabotaging thoughts, behaviors, low moods, low vibrations, toxic relationships. I remember even 6 years ago meeting a number of people that were in 12-step rooms for codependency. And they were there because they had a boss who they were codependent with. They had a supervisor that that was toxic, yet they were entangled in this relationship with them, caretaking them. And they were there to break that relation, to learn how to manage that relationship differently, or how to manage their own life differently. So it doesn't have to be an intimate relationship. It could be a relationship at the office. It could be a relationship with a friend, a sibling, a parent. It could be the relationship with yourself. If you're watching tonight's podcast, you already know how you feel about your life.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's your responsibility to implement and impact change starting right here, right now. Now, your ego, by nature, is going to want to minimize, deny, and manipulate your truth, because ego doesn't like change. Ego likes to keep things right where they're at. Why? Because then ego is in control. But when we're willing to face our own ego, literally face our own ego, and be honest with ourselves and ask ourselves, the most important question is, am I okay? Do I like who I am? Do I like how I feel? Do I like the way I wake up in the morning? And if the answer is no, or no, or no, absolutely not, then you can take the first step. And you could deny ego from giving ego permission to continue to keep you on this path that was given to you, that was handed to you. And so tonight, what I want to do in our closing segment here, as we're coming up on the hour, is I want to invite the viewers to ask us a question tonight. The way the closing segment works is we go into whoever's on the up shelf with me will be the first to speak and answer a question. So if you have a question, let's say I'm going to put Ev, you're right next to me, so we'll keep you on the top row here. For now, Ev's going to be the first to be asked a question. If any viewers has a question, the first question that comes forward that's relevant to tonight's topic on breaking free of your past patterns to let go and flow. If you have a question for Ev, bring it forward right here, right now.
Hey, while we're waiting for that question, Ev said something that is so important, and I'm going to repeat it. Ev said this: as long as we stay in these old patterns, these old habits, these rituals, keep on repeating it, the universe, life, is always going to repeat that right back to you until you get the lesson. So whatever's going on in your life right now, if it's repeating, there's a part of you that's not ready to get that lesson, to learn that lesson. That is what we're here to do, is we're here to learn and grow and learn and grow.
So Ev, we got a question coming in from Flagstaff, Arizona, from Christopher Peckham, one of the finest chefs I've ever met in my life. It happens to be plant-based. I just absolutely love what he puts together. But his question is, Ev, what or when was your most vulnerable moment? How did you break free?
Beautiful, brother. Look, there's been plenty of vulnerable moments within my life. It was the most vulnerable, I guess, probably through a relationship that I was in. When you come into those areas, and I've been talking about how I was falling into relationships and seeing the pattern of that codependent behavior. I had to be vulnerable, I guess, with myself and own up that I kept attracting that same energy into my life. Simply, I didn't love myself.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't love myself. I actually fell into a codependent behavior of whoever was coming into my life to love me. So how did I move through it, and how did I break free? I had to come back home, my brother. That's what all my work revolves around right now. It's coming back home, and like we keep talking about, to be able to love yourself from an unconditional place of infinite love, like I keep talking about. But like we've talked on the show tonight, I first had to forgive myself, firstly, for not being in that loving space, that I came down here on planet Earth, like we all do, brothers and sisters, full and lit of unconditional love. Until that is taken from us, we're always unconditional love, my brothers and sisters. So when I was able to forgive myself for not only not loving myself, but falling into those spaces, I won't call them traps, because I look at them as lessons now. Those relationships were the most beautiful gifts of my life, because they were able to bring me back home, the mirror effect that we keep talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the biggest ones. Like I said, it's being able to forgive yourself, being able to accept where I was within my life, falling into that codependent behavior, and then being able to release. And when I say release, no, this was etheric, this was energetic, cutting the cords. We've talked about on this on previous shows, the umbilical cord that we find ourselves attached to people, places, and things outside of ourselves because we may not have that love for self. I had to do other releasing things. Another one that I did, which many men probably wouldn't know about, is a releasing bath. I put Epsom salts. You can do it magnesium. You can do it with Himalayan rock salts, where you sit in that darkness, that space of yourself. And at the end of the bath, put a mirror there and look yourself in the eyes. Don't just don't look at yourself like you do in the morning to comb your hair, brush your teeth, and all the other stuff, but look yourself in the eyes and ask yourself, what do you need to release? And the beautiful subconscious, it starts to whisper. And those things will come up to the surface of that water. And as we know, water is beautiful. It's programmable. It stores memories. So when you're able to bring those things that you may need to release within your life, my brothers and sisters, allow the water to do the rest of it, and it will flow out of that bathing tub as good as it came in. These things aren't who we are right now, my brothers and sisters. These are things that have happened in the past. It's nothing that we need to shoot for in the future, because we're here, we're in the present, we're in the now.
Love that, Ev. I'm gonna hit you up for a second question tonight.
Wow.
I think that this question is one that I think is a good question for you. Jillian says, what about healthy patterns? Can they lull us into just as much of an ego space of living? I'm going to repeat that question and let that one sink in. What about healthy patterns? Can they lull us into just as much of an ego space of living? I love that question, Jillian. And Ev, I'm giving it to you because you're the epitome of a man on really embracing healthy patterns in your life today. We clearly see that and how you show up on a day-to-day basis. So is it possible that you could get roped into healthy patterns that can lull you back into the ego space of living, even in a healthy pattern?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question, sister. And it's funny. I was actually, it just came on my mind this morning. One of those things that we perceive, the healthy pattern of exercise. I've talked about this in previous shows that, I was caught in the addictive healthy pattern of exercising daily for years of my life at one stage, which in ego space, to me, it was just the known space. It was a belief system that I had basically programmed within my body. So my body was sending me messages that I had to train all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So 100%, sister, that I would see that as a healthy pattern going into that particular space. But where the ego drives it, it can become very unhealthy. Because like I said, I wasn't sleeping properly. I actually started to lose weight. And obviously the mental side of you believing that it was a healthy program. So yeah, it's a beautiful question. And that was one for me for sure, Jay.
So even we could embrace a healthy pattern, and is it when it fills our headspace and we obsess about it that it becomes how do we balance? How do we keep ourselves even in healthy patterns from overcompensating? And is there such a thing as an unhealthy healthy pattern? I guess is really what we're talking about.
One thing that was part of that though, Jeff, before you go, my brother, it was the old belief system of perfection as well.
There you go. There you go.
And that was inherited to me.
Right. I mean, underneath the healthy, see, here's how I look at it. We don't want to create new patterns. We don't want to create new habits. We don't want to create new behaviors. What we want to create is healthy new practices.
So what's the difference between a practice and a pattern, Fasano?
Well, think about it. What is the definition of a practice? I'm practicing something new and healthy in my life. When practicing that, a pattern comes in of, as Ev said, oh wow, I'm feeling an addictiveness to this because I feel the only way I'm going to be loved is if I'm perfect. So you can have this healthy pattern or practice, but it's still always, something's always going to come up. Folks, this stuff doesn't end. The stuff that keeps coming up doesn't end. It just doesn't end. It's how we grow into the adults that we are and gather all of these tools and consciousness and awareness so that when something else or another layer comes up, we know how to deal with it.
Beautiful.
We know how to feel. We know what we need to do to move through that layer, because the way I look at it is the day we transition is the day we've grown to the point where we're supposed to grow in this lifetime. We've learned what we needed to learn. We've learned the lessons.
Beautiful.
And now we're ready to move on. It's always going to be there, but it's not going to be incredibly deep inside of us. At times we might go through, and we've done a show on the shadow or the dark side. Yeah, we're going to go through shadow periods in our life, but in those shadow periods, there's light in those shadow periods, because in those shadow periods is where our greatest growth and learning is going to come from. And then we move through it. But if we can garner enough tools, all of the tools in 74 episodes that we've given, we've given a lot of tools to people to use to move through all of this stuff.
Jeff, Abigail says it ends when we no longer need to fix anything and we are at peace. Love that, Abigail Engel. Beautiful. Thank
But
you for
here's the
sharing.
thing, Abigail, I'll ask you this. Was there anything to fix anyway? We don't need to be fixed. There's
All
nothing
right, so
broken.
here's your question, Jeff. This is the only question that's come forward that I'm seeing, and I'm going to modify it a little bit, if I may. Comes
Chris
from
is on.
Christopher Peckham. What he said to you is, Jeff, when did you last feel betrayed? What was the circumstance? I'm gonna change the question. I'm gonna modify it just a little bit, Christopher, for Jeff, and that is when you have felt betrayal in your life. Let's say most recent times you've felt betrayed. What have you learned from that experience about yourself? And how did you release yourself or heal from the emotions or feelings, whether it was emotional, mental, physical, or spiritual betrayal?
The first thing that pops into my mind is something that happened here in 2016. I had a radio show, and it wasn't betrayal. I can't place myself in any circumstances where I felt betrayed. What happened is it triggered a deep stuff in me where I think I did something wrong. What did I do to create this? And what did I do? It was I did something wrong. It was so deep that it came up. I wasn't treated fairly. I wasn't honored. And when I asked for that and stuff like that, the dude just hung up the phone on me. And it was a large sign of disrespect for me. So when that happened, it was traumatic in me. And I don't mean to get dramatic about this, but it really brought up this sense of, what did I do wrong? I didn't do something right. I did something wrong. And what I went in to learn, it was the beginning of me moving through a greater depth of loving, honoring, and valuing me. Because what I said in my reaction or response to it was, wow, that dude didn't respect me at all. That dude didn't care about how I felt. He didn't know how to communicate. I went, he. So I started pointing the finger at this guy. But I knew, because the feelings were so intense and deep, that I knew I needed to look at me. I knew I needed to look at me and why the word wrong kept on coming up. I did something wrong. I did something wrong. I did something wrong. All based upon the reaction to the way this guy treated me. Treated a 60-year-old man. And the things that he said and the things that he did. So it wasn't betrayal. It was really more about honoring and valuing me, and then moving on a deeper path to go deeper into that space of loving, honoring, and valuing me, and getting the lesson of that situation that moved me to a place of expressing myself lovingly by saying, you know something, that doesn't work for me. You know something, that doesn't resonate for me. You know something, what you said. So it was more of a self-expression through love of who I am. I never felt betrayed, and I'm even trying to think about betrayal. You know,
I'm gonna give you a second chance for redemption here, Jeff. Here goes. Here goes. Just take it at face value. You don't need to read into that. When was the last time you betrayed yourself?
Oh, dude, we got another hour?
And when you had the awareness that you betrayed yourself, how did you get out of that mess?
And find the lesson of why I'm feeling betrayed. It in many ways, lots of times it happens when, and it doesn't happen anymore, but somebody comes to me to do a photo shoot, and I go into how, what's your fee? The first thing that I would do would be to ask them what their budget is. What is they, and I want to take care of them. I want to take care of them. I want to take care of them, because the root of it is I want to take care of them. I want them to love me. I want to be the good guy. And I would undercut myself, my fee for a photo shoot. And after that, I would become enraged because I betrayed who I am, my worth. I wasn't taking into account my worth, my value, and all of that stuff. I was taking care of them.
Exactly.
I was taking care of them. And that is, and if Josh was here right now, Josh and I have that same wound. In order to be loved, is about taking care of another's needs, always taking care of them, always taking care of them. What? Well, I'm going to go do the same amount of work for what I'm giving them to what I feel my fee is, and the fear of losing the gig, the fear of losing the relationship. I'm going to give myself away, even in a relationship, for the fear of losing it. So I've betrayed myself many, many times. Like I said, you have another hour.
Yeah.
I can
Beautiful. I want to take a moment here just to welcome any viewers that are coming in live for the first time this evening, or if you catch us on replay for the first time, welcome home. Welcome to Real Men, Real Talk Live. This is where it's not about the show, it's about the message. This is where we get real. We speak our truth. Sometimes we speak truths that even our own relatives may not be ready to hear, but it's a truth that needs to be shared. Mm-hmm. And I could tell you guys that there's been so much healing that's taken place within my own home, my own family, because of how we show up each week in episode 74 this week, right here in 2021. And so if you are new to the show, welcome. We'd love to know what city, state, or country you call home tonight. And we're just so glad to have you back. If you've been taking some time off, welcome back to Real Men, Real Talk Live. So this is I want to take a moment also to acknowledge both Jeff Fasano and Evis Love for showing up tonight, speaking your truths. You got hit with a couple of hard questions tonight. Now it's my turn. If anyone has a question.
I think Chris has got one out there. I'm not too sure if it is that your question, Christopher, or is that previous, my brother?
I think it's a comment.
I'm not understanding that one, so I'm inviting.
Reframe it, Chris. Otherwise, if someone else has got a question out there, my brothers and sisters, let's fire Jay up. We're going to give Jay the rough man. Let's let him dive in deep.
Spokane, Washington. Welcome, Angel. I once lived in Issaquah, Washington, right across, the pass there, the other side. Spent a lot of time in Spokane, Washington. Welcome home.
Any questions out there, my brothers and sisters?
If not, we're going to give you 30 seconds. And if not, I'm going to invite Evis.
We're gonna have to fire one, Jeff, by the looks of it.
What's that?
We might have to fire one for the brother.
Here we go. Katrina says.
Here we go. Oops, sorry. There you go.
Nope.
There you go.
Hey.
There you go. There you go.
Says, do you ever wish that you discovered yourself sooner in life, or everything in divine tube? That's I love this question, Katrina, because I hear it come up so often with men and women that that I engage with in my coaching world, whether it be in a hike and heal experience in Sedona or it be through one-on-one coaching. And she said, time, not tube. Well, time could be, we could be living in a tube, a bubble of sorts. Again, a question that she raised is, do you ever wish that you discovered yourself sooner in life? The answer is no. There are parts of my story that I wish I had awakened to earlier, but I understand that I had to go through all those experiences to get to where I'm at today. What brings me the greatest joy and warms me at my heart space is when I meet people, younger generation, and it happens almost weekly here in Sedona. People that book me for 3 hours in the wilderness to do a hike and heal experience. And they're in their 20s and in their 30s. And it brings me such a feeling of hope and warmth and joy that the younger generation are awakening much earlier, at least than I did. I can't speak for my whole generation, but I can speak for those coming through now. Such incredible desire that people have to break the chain to their past, break the patterns to their past linear heritage, generationally speaking. I had a beautiful experience hit me yesterday. One of my sons reached out to me. He called me, and I called him back within moments. And he said, this is my youngest son. And he said, Dad, I just want you to know, I just needed to hear your voice. And I said, what's going on? And he said, I'm doing some work right now, emotional healing. And that for me was like, thank you, God. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But then he went on to say to me that he said, I spent time really processing how you showed up for me and my brothers in the family before you left. And he said, I just wanted to acknowledge that to you, like how much I appreciate that and how much I have amazing memories of that time. And he also said to me, for the first time in my life, I understand you better, I think, than I ever did. He said, I didn't understand how you could feel lonely and feel so misunderstood. He said, but it's something that you and I have in common. He said, because that's how I've felt about myself my whole life. And he's 27 years old. And God, did that warm my heart. Now, if I had awakened much earlier in my life, I may not have married the woman that mothered my sons. That may not have been possible. I would have made different choices. My ex-wife may have made different choices. So when my son calls me up yesterday, and it was such a beautiful, intimate, honest conversation. It brings me back to my answer in tonight's question, which is we had to go through as a family for me to begin my awakening back in 2015, and for my son now in 2021 to really begin his journey of coming home. And as a dad, this is my son that was my problem child. I mean, I didn't understand him. I didn't know how to manage his personality as a child. I didn't know how to manage who he was. I didn't understand him. And he didn't understand me. And we were oil and water growing up. Beautiful growth for the two of us. But most importantly, for that boy I call my son. So if you are listening tonight and you have a relationship right now that's in old patterns, that's just barely surviving, and you're detached from a child or children or a sibling or a parent even, hopefully I bring you hope, healing our perspective every day in this moment. I didn't do a thing for him. I'm just showing up for me. We don't live in the same state, but somehow, some way, universally, the universe, energetically, the universe is connecting us in a healthy way, in a loving way, in a way that he called me to honor me, and in a way that I was able to honor him and let him know how much I adore him, how much I love him, and how grateful I am that he's finally has the courage to face his own shadows. And with that, I love you guys. That's why we do what we do. We do this to touch other people's lives. If one person hears something that awakens you tonight and creates hope and inspiration for you to break your old patterns that are not even yours, that you inherited, to break free, to inner freedom, to let go and let it flow, then we've achieved our goal, our intention for this evening. Anything else, guys, come up for you, or else we're going to put a pretty bonus show and.
No, that was absolutely beautiful, brother. Thanks for sharing, my man.
We all heal in our own time.
Yeah. Love and light. We'll catch you guys next week. Do some self-care this weekend. All of you. Show up. Show up and grow up for yourself. Drink extra water. Make healthy choices in nutrition. Connect with someone you care about. Look them in the eyes. Tell them how much you adore them, how much you love them. Honor them, respect them. Look in the mirror and do the same for yourself. Peace and blessings. We'll catch you all next week on Real Men, Real Talk Live.